Hello and a very warm welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with your host, that's me, Rosie Gill-Moss, and joining me all the way from Scotland is Kirsty Cluff. Hello, Kirsty.
Hello, Rosie.
You are in Scotland, aren't you?
I'm going to have to say, although I'm in Scotland, I won't sound very Scottish because
No, you don't sound very Scottish. You're giving me Julie Stonehouse vibes. Are you
I'm half and
that
half.
way, that part of the world?
I was brought up in the northeast, so depending on who I'm talking to, my accent can kind of slide into Scots quite well and quite easily, or I can be proper Baker Grove, Geordie Shores type of
John's the same.
nonsense.
If he's on the phone to somebody up north, I'm like, I can't even understand what you're saying. So, Kirsty, I'll give the listeners a little background. So, Kirsty and I, we were just saying we had one very drunk phone conversation a few years ago. It will be now, and although I don't remember the contents of the conversation, I remember feeling like I'd spoken to a bit of a kindred spirit. You know, we were both flailing around in the weeds and drinking too much, and we've just sort of eating, you know, the chicken. We were in the chicken and wine phase.
Yeah.
But we've been Facebook friends, and we've watched each other kind of go through highs, lows, you know, parenting. And so I'm actually really looking forward to this, if that's the right thing to say about a grief story. But I'm looking forward to hearing the nitty-gritty of how you got here. So I guess it's over to you if you'd like to tell us a little bit about Pete. And he was in the military, but it wasn't a conflict death. Is that right?
It wasn't a conflict death. So yeah, Pete was a serving soldier, Royal Engineers. He was army through and through, to the point where we would laugh and say if he ever broke a bone, the inside of it would look like Blackpool Rock with military colours going through it, because he just was.
I was going to say red, white and blue all the way through.
Just made for military life. And such a dedicated soldier. So Pete was just a few weeks off his 22-year point. So he was a committed soldier. Less than I think it was about four and a bit weeks off his 22 years service. We had already agreed to sign up to do additional time, and we were based out in Germany. All of our married life was actually out in Germany. I married Pete in 2005.
Did not know that.
And less than 2 months later, we moved to Germany. And I remember being utterly terrified because I hadn't actually spent more than 2 weeks with him at any given time.
Oh,
because he lived in.
This could have backfired.
He was, when we first met, he was based down in Bovington, and I was living up here in Scotland, and so we'd never spent more than 2 weeks together. And I have such a strong memory of standing on my wedding day, terrified, getting into my dress with my mum, going, "But what if I'm with him for a month and I don't like him?" And, you know, and she just wet herself laughing and went, "Oh, for goodness sake, girl, pull yourself together." And it's the best thing I could have ever done. But it was really scary moving to a completely different country. And Germany was never a country previously that I thought,
it's
I
not
want to go
tends
there.
to be on the.
It's not somewhere that people
10,
want to go to, but I can tell you now, it is the best place to visit. There is so much there. I absolutely love it. And I miss it a lot.
I would like to take... Would you? Well, I'll tell you what, my eldest is quite interested in going, and if we go, I'll let you know. Maybe we can arrange a little trip.
You won't regret it. It's beautiful. It's such a wonderful country. But yeah, so
my dad was actually there when the Berlin Wall came down.
Oh my gosh.
That's a story for you. Yeah, he was reporting it. He said it's a career highlight for him. He was a military correspondent, which is so that I do have a loose interest in sort of military just through my dad's work, really. Now, were you a military family at all? Did you have military connections before? Or was this all completely new for you?
You know, my grandfather had been in the RAF, so he'd been an aircraft engineer, and you know, going back the way historically, my Scottish side had quite heavy military connections, but my parents weren't military, but we'd kind of never been. I just think the opportunity had never been there for us to have been a military family beforehand. So it's not the career path that either of my parents took.
So not only are you moving to a different country, you're moving to a different world, because being a military wife is different, isn't it? It's not a conventional life.
And it's
so that
it takes a certain type of person to want to manage to be in the military environment, because you're automatically going in knowing that you are second place and that your children are
And
second
I
place or third place, depending whether, well, no, the kids, let's not argue, the kids always go above us, so we end up, and the
you
dogs,
let's
and the lads and whatever else. So yeah, you always know that you're signing up to be in a family where a lot of the time you'll be a single parent because they'll be away. A lot of the time you'll
and
have
I
to put your own plans and your own needs second place, third place, fourth place, for the sake of their career. And you have to give up everything. I gave up
mm,
my whole career to follow him, and I don't regret it, not one
and
single bit. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't really pissed off when he died, because it was almost my turn to get my career back. We'd made this stupid deal in that, for the whole time that he was going to have his career with the army, I would follow him, and love it and be a part of it. And but then when it was out the army and time to be civilian, and civil life was my time. He was going to stay
yeah, and
home and
actually,
do the school, runs, and do the parent council meetings, and do all the fundraising stuff and bake sales, and I was going to get to invest in myself again. And then the bugger
that
went and
backfired,
died,
didn't it?
and I felt really cheated. It
I bet
complicated
you
things a
did.
bit, because I was like, shit, this is not how it's meant to work.
No, and this is it. And I think also you go in as a military wife, and I think you mentioned it in your application, with an expectation that they may die, because that must be something you have to come to terms with, but particularly when you have children with somebody, if they are in active combat. But I suppose at the same time, he will have been fit, young, and healthy ish, I suppose. But he didn't die in conflict. He died from a undiagnosed heart condition. So although you would have had this kind of base preparation for this terrible thing could happen, it didn't happen in the way that you'd
Yeah,
sort of prepared.
and think that that's one of the things that I really struggle with, because it's not that I expected him to die, because obviously we don't. But you always have it as a military wife. You always know that there's a chance that they're going to be deployed, and they're going to be injured or maimed or killed. And so when they're home, you kind of get into this false sense of security, that everything's fine, that everyone's safe. Where actually, you look at the statistics, and most people are injured closer to home rather than further away from home. But yeah, Pete survived so many tours: Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Bosnia, Afghanistan. So many tours, and came home unscathed. And yet,
Mm.
when it happened, Pete actually he collapsed at a go-kart track on a team building day. Just
And he just
And that was it. There was yeah, there was no warning signs of anything. So Pete
well, actually,
was
tell me a little bit about that, because that must have been incredibly traumatic, obviously. And obviously, as a sudden death widow myself, I know that the horror of that 1 second they're here and 1 second they're not. Just, I mean, if you can, just
yeah.
tell me a little bit about when it
So
happened.
Pete had this big inspection that was looming, this equipment inspection looming as part of his work, that was coming up on the Monday and Tuesday. And so the Friday before, the guys had said, look, we've got this team building day planned. They were heading out to a go-kart track that was about an hour's drive from the base. Um, and so he was going off for that. And then he changed his mind, and looking at the amount of work he had to do, he'd said, no, I can't, I just can't go. I'm going to send them off. They can all go off and have a great day, but I want to make sure that this inspection goes well. I want to make sure that we've got our shit together, and that, everything's, the dots are in the right place and everything's underlined where it's meant to be, type of thing. So I'd gone out to work. The children had swimming classes after school, and
And
which
just to
was our
clarify
norm.
for me, you've got two
Two girls,
daughters?
yeah, Heather and
And
Meredith.
how
So
old would they have been?
Heather was 8, and Meredith was 5. And I worked in I had two different jobs, but I was working in a middle school out there at the time, a military middle school, and we had a routine. The swim kids and the parents would get together quite regularly and go out for dinner afterwards. So we'd end up, kids would have their swimming classes. We'd throw them into a onesie because there was no point getting them fully dressed again. And then we'd go and sit somewhere in a nice restaurant and have dinner and have a proper mum's gossip or catch up. And so when Pete had said he wasn't going to go on the team building night, I said, well, I've still got plans with with the swim gang. Is that okay? He was like, yeah, it's cool, no worries. So we got to the swimming classes as normal. It's really noisy in the pool, so even when you're sitting poolside, even if your phone isn't on silent, you don't always hear it because the kids are screaming and there's loads of other people
It's
in the pool at the
awful.
same time. And
See me cringing. I hate swimming lessons.
well, yeah, exactly. Me too. And so it was just so noisy. And then we were always chatting, and it was normally, inappropriate release of frustration between, some really good friends of mine that we all lent on each other for, moaning and groaning and just
Mum
outright
friends, they
ridiculous
are.
laughing at each other. So that's what was happening. And I didn't realize that my phone must have been ringing off the hook. And I didn't hear it. And when I finally answered the phone, it was one of our neighbours that had said, we've been trying to message you. And I looked at my phone and I had so many missed calls, so many missed messages, Facebook message, like with one word, Kirsty, pick up your phone, next one going down, to try and make my phone ping as much as it could so they could get a hold of me. And I didn't understand. And so when I phoned them back, and I was like, yeah, what's going on? And oh no, Kirsty, there's been an accident. And I was like, shit, okay, what's happened? It's Pete. And I was like, okay. And she said, it's at the track. And I didn't put it together because, well, Pete wasn't going to the go-kart track, and he didn't say go-kart track, just said at the tracks. All I know is that Pete's had an accident at the tracks. And there's different train junctions and train crossings in the area of Germany that we were living in. I thought, oh my God, he's been hit by a train. Like his car's been, or something. So trying to actually get to the bottom of it, because it was so many different people trying to phone me all at the same time, trying to get a hold of me of where I am. When I finally got a hold of there was a welfare officer's wife messaged me who knew me, and she said, Kirsty, where are you? We need to get to you. And I was so, okay, so I phoned her, and her husband phoned me back, and they said, look, all I know is that Pete's been in an accident. He's been taken to hospital. All I know that he's collapsed. Where are you? So I said, well, I'm at the swimming pool in Schlossneu House, which is a little town where we lived. I said, look, which hospital has he gone to? I'll meet you there. And they said, no, we'll come and get you. And as soon as he said that, I was like, shit. And I argued and said, no, I'm perfectly capable of driving. Me being me, sort of, I'm not waiting for somebody. I can get on the road now. I can, my friend will take the kids. I can get on the road now. I'll be there before you. So where am I going? So he just said, no, we're going to send someone for you. So I kind of went back into where all the mums were. And by the time they got the kids out the classes and showered, and I just said, look, something's happened to Pete. He's on his way to the hospital. I don't know what's happening, but they're coming to pick me up. So can somebody please have the girls? And they were brilliant. They were so lovely and so supportive. And said, no, we'll take the girls and we'll keep them overnight if we need to. Just, get yourself sorted, get what you need out of your car, because you'll have to leave your car at the swimming pool. And I remember going outside and waiting, and Sharon, who I absolutely adore, one of my friends, came out with me, another swim mum, came out with me, and she had barefoot, and this was in February. It was freezing cold in Germany. She had nothing on her feet at all, and she was like, I'm going to stand outside and wait with you while they come. And I remember turning to her and saying, what if he's dead? And she just looked at me, and she didn't say, he won't be dead. She just said, if he's dead, you're not on your own. We've got you. But let's not jump to that yet. And I said, but what if he is dead? If he's dead, they'll come to get me and they'll be in uniform, won't they? Because that's what they always say. If you're going to get a military notification, they come in a uniform. So if he gets out this car and he's in a uniform, then we know he's dead. And she went, okay, yeah, we can look at that. We can. That's the next 10 minutes of us waiting for this guy to turn up. If he gets out in a uniform, we know he's dead. And then we'll face that. So we stood in pretty much shivering silence, and I kept trying to say to her, go inside, go and get some shoes on, I'll be fine for a minute. She's like, no, I'm not leaving you. So she stood out in February in the middle of Germany, freezing bloody cold. We've had ice everywhere, with no shoe. And it's such a vivid memory of mine that she stood with nothing on her feet and waited for me with me.
It's making me feel quite emotional hearing it, because it is the things like that that make the difference, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's that somebody put their own comfort or discomfort on hold
Yeah.
just to be with you while you waited. And I had a friend that came to me and left her own 3 children with her husband and just up sticks and came to me. And because in that moment, you know, this, is he dead? What if he's dead? I can remember doing this to the police. Just tell me, is he dead? But of course they couldn't.
No.
And in that moment, I've made a couple of notes as you were talking there. And one of the things was that kind of feeling of being hunted, because you would have looked, I get overwhelmed by my phone. If I don't look at my phone for an hour or two, I get like 25 WhatsApp messages or something, and I find it overwhelming. But in this moment, your phone must have just been full. You must have not known who to reply to first. And maybe it's the wrong word, the feeling of being hunted, but that feeling of being
I was bombarded. I was just
trying to.
completely
That's
bombarded.
the word I was looking for. Thank you.
And when you're on the phone, if someone finally gets a hold of you and you're phoning them, and then somebody else is trying to cut in on that phone call, and because your phone will start beeping in your ear when someone else is trying, the information was just, there wasn't a lot of information coming in, but what was coming in was so interrupted. It was like trying to understand Morse code, because all the different pings and beeps and blips that was going off was just overwhelming. So we
and you
we're
just want the
standing
clarity as well
in the car park outside the swimming pool, completely oblivious. And I remember saying, do you know what? I'm going to get to this bloody hospital and he'll have a bandage on his head and he'll be sat drinking a cup of tea.
Nice cup of tea.
Which he doesn't like hot drinks anyway. But they would have forced a sugary cup of tea. And I was like, the daft sod won't have eaten anything. And he's just passed out. And I was like, ah, dick. Like, oh, for God's sake, typical Pete. He wouldn't have eaten anything.
Yeah. I lay in the bath with the kids while I was waiting for Ben to return from his dive trip, and I, in my own head, uttered the words, "You better be bloody dead." Like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't mean it.
No, of course not.
But then you start thinking, did I make it happen with my words?
Yeah. But that's
Not that powerful.
Your overhead brain just completely takes you there. And that's something that even now I think about, when I said, what if he's dead? And then I was like, did I make that happen?
Did I make him dead? No, we're not that powerful. My mum told me that.
Yeah. My mum said this, yeah, you're not that powerful. And that's it. So the officer, the welfare officer turned up, who was really lovely. He knew Pete really well.
In uniform?
And he knew me really well. I had, a friendship with his wife, and he was in civvies. He wasn't like scruffy. He hadn't come from the gym or anything, but he was just in a pair of nice trousers and a shirt. He wasn't in a uniform. So I instantly relaxed. And so did Sharon. She's like, right, that's cool. I can hand you over now, because it's okay. He's not there because
you've built this bargain, haven't you?
False sense of security.
And this is the bargaining, isn't it? It's bargaining. It's, if they're not in uniform, there's a chance my husband's still alive.
Exactly.
And there's all these.
Well, it wasn't even there's a chance he's alive. He is alive, because I've always been told.
Yes.
Pete would always tell me, and every army briefing that you went to as a wife, is that if it's bad news, we're coming in a uniform. So you. And
actually, that's what got me, was the police were in uniform. So I had a glass panel in my front door, and you come down the stairs, and I had the baby in my arms, and the dog was. So I put her into the living room, came back out again, and it was those few seconds that the penny dropped. there's uniformed police officers on my door at 7 o'clock at night. They're not bringing me good news. But like you, I was still, he's had an accident, he's in a hospital, I just need someone to look after the kids, you know, he might need looking after for a while. But my mind just did not go to, he's dead. It just doesn't. You're not conditioned to think that way, are you? Your brain protects you.
This is it.
So,
You're clutching at straws every step of the way,
of
I
course
think,
you are.
you know, during those moments, because
You don't want it to be real.
exactly, and it creeps in and you go, oh God, what a stupid thing to say. Why would I even, but as reality would have it, that was the truth of it. We had an hour's drive, or about an hour's drive, to get down there, to which point we talked a lot of shit and random stuff, because it's, you know, sat in the car with somebody who, yeah, he knows Pete really well. He actually, this guy, the officer had gone through the ranks with Pete, above him, but with officers, you can. There's two different types of officers. You have officers that build their way up through the ranks, and then you get the ones that just go straight in. And this guy had built his way up through the ranks, and he was really highly respected, and he was really held in high regard by the lads. And,
one of the good guys.
you know, he's a lovely lad, a great guy. And he checks in
But
with
still,
me now
for
and
sitting
again.
for an hour in a car.
Well, this is it. So we're just shooting the breeze. But again, I remember saying, oh, you know, Pete's going away to Canada next month, and you know, he's been home for a while, so I can't wait to get him out from under my feet. Which is,
Yeah.
in hindsight, you sit going, he was never ever going to be back under my feet ever again.
You'd give anything to have him under your feet, right?
Oh God, yeah. God, yeah.
Yeah.
But in that random talking crap, I wasn't mourning about Pete being under my feet, but I just went, yeah, God, I could be doing with, you know, him out from under my feet. He's been home for a while now. Bloody hell, I'm not used to this, because Pete would have been away for 6 months at a time, quite a lot, you know. So,
And actually, that can make it quite challenging. I mean, I will go into this and the impact on your family unit, but Ben also worked abroad. He would tend to do 1 week a month abroad. His business was in France. And so for that first week or so, you can almost kid yourself that they're at work, or because because they're not there all the time. I don't know, you can almost fool yourself that it's temporary, and then the reality comes
oh
crashing
yeah,
in.
definitely.
So
But as an
where did he
independent,
take you then? Did
strong,
he take you to the hospital? Oh,
as an independent,
sorry.
strong parent, I think that's what we are, and them being away all the time makes us like that. So you would think that it would make us, well, does it make us more easy to adapt to adult life because we spent a lot of our time as single parents anyway? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters, because even though they're not physically with you, they're there, aren't they?
That's it.
And actually, I had almost the opposite problem, in that Ben was away for a week, but then he would be at home for 3. So he was very present when he was present, and then he would be gone. And it was quite. So I would say, in a way, the kids were very lucky, because he was quite hands-on dad, so they got more time with him. But that also means that the rift is then felt bigger, because he did do the bedtimes, bath times, and things. So anyway, I digress. Let's go back to your story. And so you're presumably the hospital?
Yeah, we got
Was it a military
we got to the
hospital?
hospital. I had phoned in the car on the way down. I'd phoned my mum back here in Scotland and said, I'm on the way to hospital. Pete's had an accident. I don't know what's happening yet, but can you please pack a bag, because the army can get you here. They can fly you out. I might need help if Pete has to stay in hospital for a while. And at that point, they'd said, the welfare officer had said, you know, it is the most random thing. He said, is there somewhere nearby we can land a chopper? And I'm like, what? Like, my mum's going to go on a
What, near
chopper?
your
Are you
mum's?
serious? Like, we were laughing I was on the phone to my mum at the time. We were laughing. And I was like, well, we've got horses, so we can clear a pony field. We can clear the horses out of a pony field and you can land a chopper. I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, well, yeah, because we need to get her here to help, if Pete's, seriously injured and he's going to need that kind of support, it's a possibility. Let's not discount it. So my mum was like, yeah, I'll pack a bag. I phoned the padre, who's a lovely friend of mine, Mike, and we worked together in the school. He did a lot of work in the school, and I just phoned the padre and said, I'm on the way to the hospital. Can you please get there, Pete? Something's happened to Pete. Could you please meet me there? Which he did. So when we arrived at the hospital, in the hospital car park, Mike, the padre, was parking up as well. So he'd literally just got in his car at the same time and kind of come down to us. And we climbed the car park stairs, went into the hospital. And my German is hilarious. It's the most broken German in the world, but I don't ever go hungry and I never get lost. And I can always get cross with you in German. You know, it's the
I
basic.
can say I love you.
I'm never going to starve. I'm never going to get lost. I can always get home. You know, I can ask for directions and all that kind of stuff.
Those are the essentials.
Exactly. Conversational German, not so much. But, or if it is, it's very broken. So it makes sense in my head, but the blank looks on Germans' faces is quite funny at times. So I'd gone in to the reception. I said my name. You know, my husband's been brought here. All this in broken German, and they just told me, yeah, the doctors are with him. You need to wait, which was and said back to me in a mix of German and broken English. And I think that's one of the barriers that we have in our story, because in the hospitals in Germany, especially where you have a military base, there are translators paid, they are on staff. But this was after the normal working day. By the time we got down there, this was like 6 o'clock at night. You know, and they had to try and locate a translator for us, to be able to speak to us. So that kind of added another layer of waiting and frustration and trauma as it happened.
And at this point, do you know anything?
No,
What do you
no.
know? You just know he's
So
had an
that's it. We
accident.
just know he's had an accident. So we get to we get to the waiting area, and round the corner rushes three of the guys that was with Pete. One of them is commanding officer. Another couple of lads are really good friends of Pete. And I instantly start to quiz them. So my background, both my parents are medical profession. I've worked in many different wards and nursing centres, and have a solid understanding. Or I'm a bit braggy there, isn't it? Shit, no, I'm not that.
No, that's
But
not braggy. No, you've
I
got a
have an
lame.
understanding of emergency care and treatment, and you know, I was desperately trying to diagnose what had happened to Pete. So I was like, "That has he been drinking? Was he drunk?" And that was a no. Okay. Had he eaten? Did you see him eat? What did he eat? Did you know? Has he had something he shouldn't have? Did he maybe eat shellfish? He's not allergic, but he could be. You know, I mean, I was
Yeah.
really trying to diagnose this, and I was
Was he
getting
stung by a
these
bee?
poor guys were just bombarded by my what about this? And
Panicked.
did he do that? And did he say that? And it was really, really frustrating for them, but they were so good with me. And I just got more and more agitated. And because they weren't giving me the answers that I wanted. And I'd said,
Mm.
when he fell, did he hit his head? And I was like, well, I don't know. I said, so was he conscious? Was he slurring his words? Did he grab his chest before he fell over? Did he grab his head? Did it look like they couldn't answer anything. So they'd said that Pete they were all leaving the go-kart track to walk. They were still in the building, but they'd done their last race. Pete had come second, which he was kind of gutted at, but he was, he was having a good day. He'd been enjoying the camaraderie with his pals, with the lads. And he turned one of them and he said, I wasn't going to come today, sir, but I'm really pleased that day. This is a fucking awesome day. And he went, yeah. And they went to walk off, and he heard Pete drop behind him. And that was the last thing that Pete ever said. He hit the deck.
It just doesn't seem possible, does it? That
I
they can,
know
that human
it's
life can switch off like that.
exactly. It's just how can in my head I'm like, how can you be standing laughing and talking 1 second and then not
Mm.
be anymore? How can you just fail to be anymore? So
Yeah, and this is what I can't get my head around. It's And I know that to lose somebody through an illness is incredibly traumatic, and I'm not diminishing that, but you see the decline. Whereas when somebody dies very suddenly, there is no warning, no preamble, no. I mean, like you say, literally was saying what a wonderful day he'd had, and then bang.
That's it. They
And
talk about
in
it
a way,
being like we're all hit by the same tsunami, but if it's an illness, you can see it coming, and you're standing facing the water, so you can see
mm,
the wave coming for you. And you and I had our backs to the water. It's probably a shit
Ben did
analogy
literally.
considering your story, my darling, and I'm so
They're
sorry.
all that. Do you
But
know what? I'm not sensitive at all, Dan. But I did when in the early days. I can just all the grief analogies are water based, and they are. I'm treading water.
yeah,
The waves of
keep
grief.
your head above
But
the water. You're like that fucking hell. Shut up.
now I let the water roll over me. But it is. And this is the thing, like the sensitivity around words, and I mean, have you been go karting?
No, never. I've never gone go-karting. I've never
And
let my girls go go-karting, which is ridiculous because he didn't have a crash
because
at
it
the
didn't
go-kart
cause
track.
it.
But I
No,
did go back to the
no.
track. Before I left Germany, I did go back to the track because I needed the closure to see where it happened. I needed the
Yeah,
closure,
I went down to
and
the closest land
that's it.
where Ben drowned. Same reason.
I learned in the hours and days after Pete's death that Pete had never regained consciousness, but the lads that were with him did their best to save him, and they ran a brilliant trauma response, CPR and everything, and they did everything they could for him to keep him with us, and they got his heart started twice, but his heart just wasn't strong enough, and later the coroner had said that even if he'd had a surgeon with him, a trauma surgeon with him right there next to him in a sterile environment with all the equipment and bells and whistles that you would need, he couldn't have been saved. And
Did that give you comfort
yes,
in some weird way? Yeah, because it
the,
couldn't have been
the
avoided.
biggest comfort I got wasn't just the fact that he wasn't on his own, that he was with his friends. It was that they tried their very best for him, and they gave him every single opportunity that they could to keep him with us. And when you look at the alternative of that day, if Pete was always destined to die on that day, he was meant to be in the hangar on his own, finishing the work while all the other lads are off. So he would have had no chance at all. And that makes
And
me
you're not
think
going to
sometimes,
know.
like, when would I have got worried? If he'd been at work, a late night wouldn't have concerned me.
No. Well,
When would I have
and this
tried to
is like with
phone him?
Ben.
When would I have stopped trying to phone him and turned up at the hangar? And how long could he have been left on his own, waiting to be found? And the comfort that I get from the fact that he was with guys that loved him, guys that did their damnedest to save him, and they carry that with them. I don't like that bit. It hurts me to know that they carry the trauma of trying to save their friend and not being able to, because that's got to
Yeah, but
affect
that's
you.
because
That's got
That's
to
because you're a very
affect you.
nice person for you to think. Yeah, and yes, you're absolutely right. And I wanted to speak to the guys who've been on the boat with Ben, and they wouldn't. The skipper wouldn't take my call, and I did finally get to speak to him in coroner's court. And actually, as soon as I saw him, this kind of enemy figure, this villain that I'd created in my head of the skipper, he wasn't. Ben was an adult. He chose to go in the water. But this feeling of lost and alone it's one that really haunts me, actually, because the thought of him being out in that sea on his own, like an unclaimed piece of baggage,
Yeah.
that makes me really sad. But I don't know if he'll ever be found now. And I live with that waiting. Will I get a call? But so, yeah, I insofar as you can have a good death, I suppose. He was having a really good day and it was very quick for you. But it doesn't help, does it?
No.
It doesn't help that he didn't feel the pain, or I don't know. It's that snatched away from you.
It's that
Um,
real sudden, what's happened, and I think I mean, my heart broke when you joined our gang, and you shared some of the some of your story in those first few months of you being part of the group. And my heart broke for you, absolutely broke, because it was exactly as you just said there. The it's the unknowing, and not, and that I have this thing that I need closure for everything.
Same,
I need
same.
closure for everything, and it cripples me when I don't get it. Um,
Yeah, and it actually, I thought I had made peace with it, and then I had a text pop up on my phone, and it was I think it must have been an unknown number because it was a Happy New Year text, and it wasn't from anybody in my contacts. And I looked at this picture, and at first glance, it looked like Ben.
oh my God.
And I screenshot it. I sent it to Lulu, and I just went, "Just tell me that it's not." And I mean, she never met Ben. I don't know how I thought she'd know, but it was. I think she was the only person that wouldn't think I was totally mental for doing it.
Yeah, but we lose all
And I do
rationale
live.
at these kind of things, don't we? So
Fucking hell! Like, yeah, we're cracked. But it was the fact that my body responded like that. Could it be? Whereas you'd think by now that would have totally left me. And I don't believe he's out there. Of course I don't. How can I be remarried? How could I have,
no.
rebuilt my life? Because you cannot survive in those circumstances. But I think, like you, the lack of closure, for want of a better word, is hard because I did a funeral. I've done all the I've had him legally declared dead. I've done all the protocols, but I've never seen his body. I wouldn't want to, but I've never seen his body. I've never had a coroner. It's a presumption of that. So yeah, I can relate to that feeling of being just of needing to know the facts, which does bring me on to asking you a bit about the girls because I had my three. So Monty was 7, but he was 8 the next month, and Hector had just turned 5. So I had a 5 and a nearly 8-year-old as well. And if you are able to, because I know this is probably the hardest bit that we have to do as widows, but it is a really important part of our story and just how you told the girls and how they reacted and how they are now. Maybe if I know they're teenagers now, so insofar as they would
Yeah.
be okay with you talking about them.
The the girls, the whole telling everybody was horrendous. The way I was told in the hospital was horrendous because the translator and the doctors and everything else was absolute farce. An absolute farce. And there was a language barrier that was there, but it was so traumatic. And we were waiting for so long. By the time it actually came about and I got the answers I got, Pete had been deceased for several hours. So I had to let the Sharon and Maria, the 2 women that were helping look after the girls, I had to let them know and said, "Look, can I just have tonight?" Sort myself out. They kind of drove at breakneck speed one of my other friends down to be with me, Elspeth. They drove Elspeth to the hospital to be with me and to stay with me back at the house. Um, and at this point, they didn't send a chopper for my mum because obviously he was. If he'd been
I'm really
alive, they may
disappointed
have
about that.
considered it, but no, they got my mum on a flight first thing on the Saturday morning. This was Friday night that Pete had died, so first thing the Saturday morning they got my mum a flight and got her over to Germany. She landed at lunchtime, and we arranged that mum would get to me just before the girls came home, and unfortunately there was an incident because Pete had died with the lads and they saw how seriously ill he was and they saw them being resuscitated, they were part of his resus team, and they all needed to be able to share with their families what had happened to them that day. It wasn't fair to ask them to keep that quiet, so I was very quickly pushed into having to announce Pete's passing, to which point people started talking about it in their houses. Fair enough. But my girls still hadn't been told by me because they weren't even home with me yet. And unfortunately, my friend had taken the girls to a play park, and another soldier's child approached them at the swings and said, "Your daddy's dead." And I'll never forgive that family. I will never forgive that family. And it, it's,
So
is it
sorry.
an honest mistake? Well, why would you talk about something so horrific happening around young children? And then those children go out and see my girls in a park, and oh, your daddy's dead. And it was such a matter of fact way that my
Because
girls
that's how
found
children
out, and
are.
I had no control over it. My friend had no control over it, because by the time she got from the bench to the swing set where they were, it was too late. It had come out. So my girls came home and they ran at breakneck speed from my friend's car to our front door. We had this glass door that's got the security glass in it, so it's all got this wibbly wobbly glass, and it's got the metal in it, and the little squares. And I didn't. There was no doorbell ringing. They were pounding, both of them pounding on the glass with their hands. Mummy, 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 mummy. And I have such a vivid memory of that. And sorry, I sound really snotty now. And but
I'm going, so you're all right.
it's just such a vivid memory of hearing my girls so desperate to get through a door to me. So my mum and I sat with them, and we told them that Daddy was in heaven. I was really careful about the way I said it, because I didn't want to use the word gone, because when you go somewhere, you can come back.
You come back.
And I didn't want them to think that he was able I needed to be clear from the very start. And it's something that my mum and I discussed before the girls got there, that we had to be so straightforward with them. And her experience as being, a Macmillan nurse for so many years, hospice director, and working in the hospital environments with families and bereavement. She was like, you have to be, from the word go, from the very start, so that support and that advice was amazing. But I mean, the girls just couldn't fathom it. So they asked me then, so where is Daddy's body? And I said, it's in the hospital, in a special part of the hospital. And then, because we don't know what happened to Daddy, and we don't know why Daddy is dead, they have to get a special doctor to come over from England, because Pete's post-mortem wasn't allowed to be done by a German coroner. It had to be done by a military British coroner. So they had to fly somebody out. So
Just another complication
it's
then.
another complication. It was so complicated with Pete at the hospital, even because the German police were there because it was an unknown death. Then the military police came because he's military. Then SIB, the military branch of the SIB, had to come in.
For the layman, what's that mean?
Pardon? Oh, a special
SIB.
investigation branch.
Thank you.
So,
Just for the
so and
non-military.
it was just like, this is unbelievable. Like, and there was a point, and I was like, what? Why are all these police here? I don't. Why is there so many people that need to know about this? And it was really overwhelming. And it was just because Peter died in unknown circumstances. And I remember having a big shouting match with them at the hospital, which, these guys were awesome because they put up with my shit. Because they told me I couldn't see him. And I was like, well, who's identified him? I've just been told he's dead. Who the fuck's identified him?
That's
Because
a
I'm
good
his
point.
wife.
Yeah.
But actually, as I was being notified, they'd got one of Pete's commanding officers that was at the hospital still to go and identify Pete, so I didn't have to. Because I was like, that's not, it can't be Pete. He's given his, and then I was like, you make these stories up, and I was like, he's took his wallet out of his
Oh yeah.
back pocket because he's sitting in a go-kart and that'll dig in his arse. So he's handed his wallet to some other poor shit, and that little bastard's dead, not Pete. Because my Pete's not dead. Why would he be dead?
Pete's having a lovely time. He's still going
Exactly.
around that
Pete's probably
go-kart
sat at the
track.
fucking bar wondering where everyone else is. But and that, but your head takes you to these ridiculous stories, because that seems more comprehensible than the
Than the
fact that they're dead.
reality.
So yeah, there was loads of different authorities, and involved just because it was an unknown death. When the post-mortem was done that week, the post-mortem was done on the Monday. Pete died the Friday, post-mortem was done the Monday. And the
Military efficiency right there.
yeah, well, military are good for a lot of stuff. So yeah, and I have to say I can't fault them on how they handled me like that. You know, I can fault the hospital on the notification system and how things happened there, but um, not the military. They've been good to us.
And have they looked after you since? I know this is a bit of a digression,
Yeah,
but
there was a huge amount of care in the first 2 years because Pete and I had bought a derelict house in Scotland in 2012, and we were in the midst of starting renovations with it. So we were actually due to break ground. We'd met with builders, we'd done all the planning and the building warrants, and we'd done all the designs. And Pete was heavily involved in the designs with his because his mum and dad were very interested in architecture, and his dad did a lot of work with the building and planning team down where they lived. So we, a huge amount of input from the Cluff family name had gone into this house build and renovation and extension. And we were due to break ground in the Easter, and then Pete died in the February. So I was left with
what
a
did he
house
do?
that was derelict, living in army quarters. And normally, when somebody passes in the military, you're given between 3 and 6 months to vacate your property. Most military widows don't want to stay in garrison
Yeah.
because they just, the trauma of being there around everybody else is really hard. With me, I worked for military schools, so MOD schools, and I worked as an Army Welfare Service using community worker. So I had two good jobs, and I'd kept my nose clean, so I hadn't got caught. Let's just say that. Not that I'd never done things that were naughty sometimes, but I'd never been caught. So the regiment very kindly sponsored us to stay over in Germany while I was trying to get a house back here.
So find what the fuck to do.
Well, exactly, and so they'd offered me the nearest garrison to where the house that I'm sitting in now is. This is one that we built. The nearest house garrison to us was Lucas, which was about an hour and 20 minutes away from here. And the thought of moving to a different garrison that was still over an hour away from my immediate family, and having other people look at me wondering who we were and hearing the grapevine and the gossip, and I could not cope with even the thought of that. I would rather be in Germany, where I had a support system of good friends, where my children had good teachers and friends and families that they knew and trusted around them. I wanted to keep as much of their life stable as I could.
Yes.
And the army let us do that. So yeah, they were really good to us. Um, we've kind of not fallen out, as in we don't speak anymore because we've had an argument, but I think naturally our life from military is kind of pulled away somewhat, um, which has got good sides and bad sides, because I
Mm,
find it really hard sometimes seeing Pete's friends, our friends, promote, because Pete would be wanting to celebrate with them and embrace them, and
yeah.
hopefully Pete would have promoted with them as well, and they climb the ranks, and Pete stays the same rank that he was. And
The world keeps turning, doesn't it?
and it's like there's that awful feeling of being left behind, and you're so torn
Mm,
because you're genuinely happy and blown away that your friends are being promoted and their families are getting posted out to exciting places, whether it be over to Canada, which is one of the posting that we always wanted to do, or over to
mm,
Africa, or over to Dubai, or where, all these amazing army postings, which, I would have loved to have gone and experienced, and Pete would have loved to have gone and experienced it as well. It's not a green-eyed monster in an ugly, bitter way. it makes me wonder how we would have managed that as a family, and if Pete would have wanted to go out there as a posting, or what rank Pete would have got to, or how long he would have stayed in for, or
It's the great what ifs, isn't it? It's
yeah,
the future that gets stolen from you because everybody's very aware that your partner, your husband, your wife, whoever you lose, they're aware of the significance of that loss. But it's the stolen future and the keepers of the memories. And I found it really difficult. And you talk watching his kind of uh, colleagues. Sorry, my brain just dropped out then. One, two. You saw what talking about watching his counterparts rise through the ranks and this passage of time going on. Now Ben had his own business, so I don't see that so much. But what I do see is, you know, this is happening, and the kids have grown up or are growing up, and I'm going to be, believe it or not, 43 next month, and he was 42 when he died. And it's all these passages of time, isn't it,
yeah,
that remind you that they aren't getting what we have. And I know that you are like every guest I have on here, and that you make the choice because you do. It's a choice, isn't it? You either lay down on the floor and cry for the rest of your life, or you do a bit of that and then you dust yourself down and put your big girl pants on
yeah.
and keep fucking going. But
I'm too stubborn to do the first one for long.
do you know what? Same, I think, and also if you are able to flip it and realize that you are still here and they are not, it feels very wasteful to do that because I know that Ben wouldn't have. I don't know what he'd have done if I'd have died, but had he been here now, he wouldn't have tolerated lying on the floor crying. It would have been,
No,
"Come on, up you get, let's go."
yeah,
And it is actually the only way to get through it. But it's a little bit of chicken and wine first sometimes. I'm just gonna, if I may, just bring you back to the girls again. I know it's a tricky one, but just so after they have been told, and presumably they did the little psychopath thing where you tell them and they're upset and then they go and do something really normal
yeah,
and you're like, what's the matter with you?
yeah.
But we now know that that is normal. That's a perfectly normal human response, especially for a child. But are you, how many years are you coming up to? Is it 5 or
It'll be
6
8
this
years
year?
on Monday.
Oh, 8. Oh, sorry, completely wrong.
Sorry, 8 years on Monday.
So that was tech support, he told me.
Hmm.
Um, so 8 years it's a long time. It's the entirety of your eldest daughter's life and longer than your before. And so they've now been without their dad for longer than they had him,
Yes,
which is
and these are big milestones. So both my girls have now hit that. So Meredith was 5. When Meredith turned 10, it hit her really hard that she had lived half her life without her dad.
yeah,
Meredith took Meredith's angry at the world, and
yeah. Hector was.
Meredith was very angry with me because I had more time with her dad than she did, and that wasn't fair. And she was angry with her
Mm.
sister because her sister had more time. She was born first, and that wasn't fair because I should have been born first, so I could have more time with dad. And
All
these are
completely
all,
irrational, isn't it?
these feelings. And Heather's 16. She turned 16 in September. She's at that. Yeah, I've lived exactly half my life now without my dad,
Mm.
and that these are
Yeah.
really heavy milestones for us to hit. The Heather is more open talking about her bereavement, and she's received some wonderful support from Scotty's Little Soldiers. Winston's Wish have done sessions with us as well. Meredith has only just agreed to start talking with the Scottish team, because Meredith doesn't like to talk about it because she believes that if she doesn't talk about it, it's not really
Go
happening.
away.
So she can just avoid it. She's a big avoider and she pretends that everything's fine, but then she implodes. And, she's. Pete and I always said that Meredith had the best and worst of our personalities because,
I've got one of them.
she got the huge ability to love, um, but she also has the worst of my temper. My temper can be horrendous, and
I
Meredith has
don't believe
definitely
it.
got my temper, and she's got Pete's temper as well. So
Which one is the dancer?
Meredith, she Meredith is a dancer, so she's. I mean, she was competing up until October. She was competitive dancing.
I've seen the videos on Facebook, and she because Tabby dances competitive. She's only little. She's only 6. She's just in mini squad. But I go to now. I'm now a dance mum, So
Oh,
my
yeah.
entire Sunday will be spent at a dance show. And I had no idea. I mean, we completely, this is not talking about grief, but what the hell, it's my podcast.
Exactly.
And I was completely blown away by the athleticism of these girls and boys, because there's some boys that do it as well. Because obviously I'm seeing the very beginning, but the girls sort of in their teens, I mean, they are athletes. They are, I suppose people think of dance as being a bit wafty and,
Yeah.
you know, but it's incredible discipline. It's a
Yeah, they
sport.
don't see the hard work. I mean, Meredith at the height of her dancing and competing last year, she was doing, 10, 12 hours of dancing a week. And then we had comps on weekends and she'd be dancing again.
Yeah.
And it was exhausting, and, trying to keep routines in your head, and sticking with your routine and not wanting to change it at the last minute, and the self-doubt, it's an
And being a
amazing
mum without a
discipline,
dad there,
but it's hard on her.
that's what I found when because she's very new to this. I'd say she's only little, but one of the show, the second show, they came out and she was nervous and she walked onto the stage and it was like, I guess like the mask went up and the stage presence came up, and you almost go to look to say, look, and they're not there, and yeah,
That's what hurts me, to
it's
see
all these.
how well the girls are doing, and he's not here to see it. And
I want a pat on the back, don't you?
yeah, I want to.
Mm,
You're doing good, girl. And
mm.
I actually want an acknowledgement that he would not necessarily have been able to pull this shit off, because I don't think he would have been able to pull this shit off. And I
I
think
know.
I've worn my widow mask for longer than I should have. But I've also worn the widow t-shirt with bloody pride at times, because I'm very emotional. I don't hide my tears a lot, but I do try and be stoic for other people when I know that my tears are going to offend them. And I try. I have this. I don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. I only want people to feel happy around me. I hate that. I don't know if you've come across it, and I call it the hungry dog head tilt. When they hear you're sorry, they go, oh. And it's like, yeah,
Yes, I do know it.
it's like when a dog's hungry and it wants your sandwich, you get
My
that.
dog does it. If you say, "Do you want to walk?" and she does it. Yeah,
You
I know
get that
exactly
hungry
what you
dog head
mean.
tilt, and sod off with that. I don't need that.
And then you have to almost downplay it by going, "Oh, I'm fine. It was 6 years ago." Whereas that makes you sound like you're really cavalier and you don't care, but you do. You just don't want to go right into your grief
That's it.
right
Like,
now.
I'm not in a place where I want to talk. I don't need to talk to you about this right now. So yeah, that it's
Come on here and do that,
they
can't you?
say they're sorry, and I'm like, oh, thank you.
You'll be able to, when you've got your episode number, you'll just be able to go listen to episode whatever it is of Widow Diathesis. It's all out there. I found it quite liberating because I could just say to listen to episode. I think I'm episode 3, and it's all there. It's all archived
Yeah,
and neatly put away for people to be able to access.
that's it. Did you
But
get
yeah, it is.
Did you feel like when people say, I don't like the word loss, because I didn't lose him.
What?
I lose
I'm
my
sorry for your loss.
keys.
Well,
I,
technically, I
you
did.
did,
So,
yeah. Okay.
but
That's,
and when you were saying about the telling the girls, I could that again going in and out like a dog at a fair. But it was I did the googling. How do you tell a child that a parent has died? And again, similar, because I couldn't say Daddy's lost at sea. You might come home,
yeah,
right? So I had to just say to them, Daddy's dead, even though at that time we didn't know that he was. And that was a very difficult decision to make, because hope is what keeps us going. Hope is what gets extinguished, I think, when you become widowed. But it's also something that could kill you when you're in that moment, because if you won't accept it, nothing can begin. The process can't begin. And you say about the children, if I'd say, oh, Daddy's missing, they would still be waiting for him.
yeah,
Because I said to Monty, the eldest, who was 7, oh, the police have come about the dog. It took a year to unpick that. So it just, they remember such little details. And one of them is, that I'd said it was about the dog and I lied. And I preached truth and honesty, but in that moment, I panicked.
yeah.
So
Because it's
tell
natural
me
for
a
us to
little
protect
bit.
them.
Of course it is. And actually, that can I have one more day? I can remember sitting through the night and just thinking, I'm going to have to break their hearts in the morning. And I almost brought it forward. As soon as I heard a movement. I went upstairs and gosh, oh, oh, that took me right back then. It's just awful, isn't it? Awful. It is the worst part of it, I have to say. Everything else happens to me, and I can cope with that. But what I can't cope with is when it comes to the kids. But how are they now? How are they now, the girls?
Yeah, they are. We're hurtling towards Monday, and it's a tricky one. Meredith's gone to a military boarding school. It is her choice. She wanted to go in there, so she's been at a military boarding school since August, and is finding her feet. Which, living away from home, it's not Hogwarts. And although she says she never thought it would be. I have a sneaky suspicion sometimes that she kind of thought it was going to be a bit like Hogwarts, and that the
I used to read all the Mallory Towers and Twins at St Clair's books when I was little,
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Enid
I used
Blyton
to love
books.
the St Clair's books.
Yeah, and I so
But
wanted
this
to go
is
to
it.
boarding school,
I
but
don't. Yeah. I think Meredith. She's home at the minute. She's meant to be going back to boarding school on Sunday night, but that would be the first anniversary that she's ever been away from me for. So I'm playing it by ear at the minute to see if I actually do take her back for that or not.
and you
But
have to sort of let them choose to a certain extent, don't you?
well,
You
this is it. I mean,
have to give
Meredith's
them a bit of
13, and
autonomy on it.
she's starting to open up, to accept that Pete is dead. And I think for a long time she's ignored it because she doesn't like to think about it. She doesn't like to, sometimes she can be on a hairpin trigger and anything will set her off. And then other times she's really so stoic you wonder what planet she's on, because it's like
Yeah.
she's actively ignoring it. Heather's quite tearful because she's away just now. She comes home tomorrow, and she's away with a ski trip. And I think
Oh
she's
yes,
quite
because you
tearful.
told me before we came on air that she's
Well, exactly.
had an accident, hasn't she?
The thing, so she got helivacked yesterday off the top of a mountain. And my
Dramatic
first thing was,
family,
did
aren't
you
you?
get any pictures of the helicopter?
Well, I was going to say, how desperate are your family to get in a helicopter, Kirsty?
Exactly.
Because this is
Like we're destined to be in a chopper at some point, I'm sure. So yeah, she was gutted that I wasn't more concerned, because like, you're talking on the phone, you're fine.
yeah, you
You
can't be.
haven't broke
You're
your
all right.
neck because you're talking on the phone, so it's fine. Don't worry. But yeah, so she'll come home tomorrow. But she herself says she's feeling a bit fragile this time. I think because it is that she was 8 when he died. She's now 16. It's that halfway,
And it's a
half
big
a life
chunk
without
of
him.
time as well.
But
It's I found 5 funny. Sorry, I've talked over.
no, it's
This
okay.
is where the eye contact is helpful. Yeah, I think it's that anything that's a chunk of time. For me, 5 years felt really symbolic, half a century. And then I didn't realise how close our dates are because I'm early March, but I'm sort of letting it happen to me this year, if that makes sense. I interviewed a friend whose dad died when she was not as young as our children, but quite young. And one thing she said to me, it's not gone out yet, but it will, was that she hated being forced to grieve. So, like on the special dates or significant dates. So, Monty, up until recently, we've taken him out of school and we've gone over to the beach. And one year, we both went on scooters up the beach. Just do something random.
Yeah.
But the others, we don't really make a big deal of the death anniversary because they're not aware. But I suppose as they get older, they will take more control of it. But my youngest Tab, she's about to do, well, I need to do the paperwork, a child bereavement couple of sessions because, of course, she was 6 months and you think, oh, well, luckily for her, she hasn't been too scathed. But of course, there's all the questions, I didn't get to know my daddy. What would daddy think of me now? And as they get older and realise that their world isn't normal, because of course we live with Holly, who's lost her mum. There's, lots of my friends are widowed, and I think it's only when they go out into school that they realise they are in the minority.
Yeah.
There'll be lots of kids whose parents live apart, but not so many with a dead one.
This is it, and that's such a problem in the schools, because I don't think, the schools that do have trained staff are few and far between. The schools that have staff that can actually approach the subject of bereavement in an appropriate, in a supportive and a knowledgeable way, and come from a personal side of it without, being too without being about them. We've seen it and spoken about it a lot in the widowed groups, that schools seem to not be getting it right. There needs to be more support.
It's
That they don't get it
this
right.
is in sorry, this is interesting because I did a like a presentation to some first year nursing students, and afterwards I said schools need something like this, don't they? So it's in my brain, hasn't made it out yet, that I would like to pull together some sort of training work, or just something that I know, that they could have a resource for schools, basically. And I potentially could go in and talk if if a child suffers from and help guide them. But you're right, there isn't much at all,
No.
actually. And my eldest son got a bit of counselling at the school he was at the time. And then I wanted to keep the counsellor private, and I said, I'll pay, but could you seek continuity, right?
Yeah.
Important. Nope, can't do that, get sacked. So we've had to seek out and pay for all, apart from holding and letting go, all the support that we've had, the children have had. And at times, particularly when I was sort of in the reads on my own, it was a cost that I couldn't really afford.
Yeah.
But I've just, if I could afford wine, I could afford to pay for therapy for my
But you
kid, right?
bend over
And
and pay what you need to pay. You bend over backwards to accommodate it, because you know that it's needed.
the long-term implications, if you don't, are so much worse. And I was a reluctant therapy goer, but I've been going for 2 years now, and I don't see myself stopping. I might reduce how often I go as things get better, but I think as long as I'm doing this, I'm going to need an outlet myself.
Yeah. Well, that's it, because you will automatically absorb what we are sharing with you. You will take that burden on as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and it
with
is.
the schools thing, Scotty's Little Soldiers, it is only for bereaved military children, but they have developed the most amazing packs for schools, and every year we have packs sent out to us to, if their kids are starting a new school, or if it's around Remembrance Sunday, and they send packs out to us to hand into the schools that are really supportive. They're full of information, and they're full of resources for the schools to use to be able to support our kids. But that should be across
Shouldn't it?
bereavement. It shouldn't just be across. I mean, we're so lucky that Scotty's Little Soldiers exists, but I do feel guilty sometimes that it's only a handful of my friends that are able to benefit from their support. I'm so grateful for their
And there
support, and it's a shame that we can't share it. You know,
and there is support out there, but it's overstretched. I mean, COVID didn't help. So there's waiting lists, and also, I mean, I booked both my boys onto this child bereavement course, and Hector just turned up and refused to go. So that's the other element with children, is they don't want to do it
yeah.
necessarily.
Meredith
And
doesn't want to engage. She's only just agreed to engage, but it's been years that we've been trying to get
yeah,
support for her.
somebody told me, and it was a friend whose husband died, and her son, the counsellor would take him for a walk on the beach, so they'd talk and walk.
Oh, okay,
Isn't that a good
that's
idea,
awesome.
particularly with teenagers? So I don't know if there's anybody that could help with that, but
That could work. I think the problem
now
that Meredith had was that people were trying to find common ground with her, but she was so dead against it. But then there was
right,
one teacher had her one teacher who's in her 50s, had her mother had sadly passed away through the school holidays. So she'd come back into school and said, "Oh, I'm just like you now, because my mummy's dead." And Meredith, being Meredith, she's my child. She's very much like me. Just went, "You're nothing like me, because you're so much older, and
nice,
I lost my dad when I was
Dad.
5. You're 50." And it was like, oh, I was approached by that member of staff and asked to encourage Meredith to apologise because she'd been rude. And I'm like, I certainly will not be doing that, because you were bang out of order. At what point do you
Yeah,
think
and
it is the
and
same losing a parent at the age of 50 as it is losing a parent at the age of 5? Get a grip.
and also grief. It's not we can't compare. And
No.
it, I mean, I may have said this before on the podcast, but the police liaison officer that came, she ran a lost dogs charity, and she compared losing Ben to very much like that. And honestly, this woman, she stank of fags,
Oh
talked
my
about her dogs all the
God.
time. But I just said to you, you have to leave my house now. You have to get out of my house now, because otherwise I'm going to say something I
Yeah.
regret. Because, and
I mean, you say
I
that
never
they
made a
can't
complaint,
compare,
but
but I think we always do. So inadvertently we do. I have this really weird, almost guilt that I'm a military widow because I didn't lose Pete at war. There was no baddie involved. There was no wicked person at the end of a weapon that took his life from him because he was defending our country. But there are other people that will belittle Pete's death. Oh well, at least it wasn't at war. Like, death is death. You know,
yeah.
I, I,
And you
I
haven't
get
got
really
an enemy to
frustrated with
hate.
that, but I feel sometimes like I'm an imposter in military widowed circles, and almost like I should be embarrassed that Pete didn't have a more, not
Dramatic.
grand death or grand do you know what I mean? I feel embarrassed that I'm with these women whose husbands literally had their lives taken from them by war or by conflict. And I feel a bit like not a charlatan. I can't think of the right word, but
No, and you'd be surprised how many people I sit across from in these, and they feel an element of guilt or that they don't fit into a particular bracket of widowhood. So I think it's all tied up in this feeling of like, who the fuck am I now? Like, where do I fit? And I think it does take time. It takes time, and it takes finding people who've been through similar. And I was talking to you, I'm thinking of Emma Gray. I don't know if you've heard Emma's episode, but she's a military
yes.
widow, but her husband died of cancer. And I think her girls aren't just similar age to yours. So maybe Woodstock, we get our sequins on.
Yeah, we're both horses as
But
well. We're both horsey folk as well,
you
so
are,
we've had a bit of
yeah,
chat.
yes.
But I think
Yeah,
as
and
well,
Emma's
like
lovely.
with cancer and disease, well, so I have this. So my partner's also widowed. Um,
Well, I wanted to ask you before we finished about this partner. So I'll let you finish, and then
yeah.
I'm going to do
Well,
a little bit of
we
probing.
have this ongoing. It's not a playful conversation at all, but it's an ongoing kind of, you had it worse, no, you had it worse, no, because Andrew's wife was diagnosed with cancer, and they battled and fought and they put so much energy and hope and prayer into her beating it. But any disease, whether it's cancer or diabetes or heart disease or Hodgkin's, or all these awful ways for people to die, they all diminish our loved one. They all take away, and they break down their characters and their physical and emotional and mental strength and what makes them them. And
Yeah.
part of me can't help but feel lucky that the man that I put in the ground was the man that I loved through and through, and his experience of death hadn't twisted or contorted his outlook on life, or
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 contaminated your relationship. Because
and I just, it would break my heart to have to feel so useless. I suppose when your partner dies of an illness, you feel, or you must feel, so the inability to help, to fix it, to make it better.
completely
And
impotent,
you
you
must
can't do
feel like you're on
anything.
the sidelines watching this horrendous thing. And you're
Mm.
watching all these things happen to your person that you love, and it's changing them. Um,
Yeah, and I've said similar actually, because initially I felt quite a bit of envy because I wanted to be able to say goodbye and have those conversations. John and Sarah were able to talk about, if he was to meet somebody and what she wanted for holiday. They had that kind of, this is what I want to happen
yeah,
conversation. But much like you, I bid farewell to my gorgeous, young, fit, healthy husband, and that's how I picture him. So didn't watch him become skeletal or angry
yeah,
or even violent. I didn't have any of that. He remains 42 and perfect. Like James Dean, wasn't it? Live
yeah,
fast, die young, or something. But it's a mixed blessing. There is this. John and I do the same thing. We talk about the watching the person that you love literally sort of deteriorate and disappear before you, compared with that sudden shock. And you can't, it's not a competition because each is equally shit.
Oh yeah,
But we all kind of, you know, yeah, there's no really no good way to die, especially when you're
no,
young
there's
and
not.
especially when you're leaving behind children.
I find
It's
it
hideous and traumatic.
odd that so many people have said to me that even though they knew it was coming, even though they had time, you can't ever prepare for it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
not everyone had those conversations. Pete and I had
No.
conversations about what he would want at a funeral, purely because if he died in
Army.
conflict, what would he want? I had to make sure we had it right. So we'd had these conversations beforehand. Um, Pete had a will because you weren't allowed to deploy without one. I find myself sometimes a bit envious of other military widows when their husbands have died in conflict, because they get a letter. Your spouse is made to, before they deploy, they have to sit and write a letter to her, if you're reading this letter type of scenario. And I wish I had that, because every time Pete
Yeah.
came home, it was destroyed.
Oh,
Every
okay.
time Pete came home, it was destroyed. So, which is
Oh,
brilliant. But I remember packing Pete's things up, just hoping that I would find one of these letters that he not remembered to get rid of, so that I could have a little bit of that from, one last word from
no, I
him,
get that.
you know. And
On the
it's
day of
it's
Ben's,
envious in a awful way, that, because nobody wants that kind of letter. But there's some wonderful songs that I've got about, this is my last letter, and they're wonderful. And I sometimes feel really quite envious that I never got that we didn't get to be as, I didn't get to have that contact from him past his past his death.
and it's something tangible that you can keep,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't know if you had the same thing, but Ben didn't have much stuff. He's wearing his wedding ring. He didn't. He had a very inexpensive watch, and he wasn't a materialistic kind of guy. So there's not much stuff. But on the night before his memorial, because not a funeral, because no body, but I just happened to open a cupboard in one of the kids' rooms, and I found in that cupboard his wedding speech, just a typed
Oh
copy of
wow.
it. And I just remember it broke me, obviously, because to see those words and how much he loved me. So I had it framed and put in the downstairs loo at my old house, and I'm going to have it reframed because it was just put in a crappy IKEA frame, and get it in and restored, and I'm going to keep it. And I also, which is not like me because I'm not a particularly kind of Pinteresty type of person, but I had this idea where he did a handprint, I did a hand, let it dry, and each of the kids put the handprint on, and I have that. So I have his handprint, and I added tabbies to it, frames it, and it's in her bedroom. So you are just so desperate for any piece of them, aren't you?
Yeah.
Now, before I let you go, I just want, if you're comfortable, and did you say your partner's name is Andrew?
Yeah.
Yeah. If it just a very brief, because I know one of the most frequent questions to widows is relationships afterwards, and we are damned if we do, and we're damned if we don't.
Yeah.
And I know that building a relationship as a fully grown adult rather than essentially a child, which I was when Ben and I was like 19, it's you come with all the baggage of being widowed, you come with children, you come with hurt, pain, we always say there's four of us in this marriage, there's not two. So
Yeah.
just a little bit for the listeners about how you guys have managed that, and particularly sort of with the girls as well, because that can be problematic, can't it?
It is tricky. It is a work in progress always. I think what helped is that Andrew and I knew each other.
Yeah.
So Andrew and I met many, many years ago when I was 4 years old. So that was 40 years ago
Oh
now.
wow.
His dad used to jump out of perfectly good planes with my mum. So our parents
As you do.
parachuted together. So we met at an airfield, at Brunton Airfield near Sea Houses. And so we knew each other. We were family friends, and that never changed. Andrew's mum and dad were invited to my wedding, and they attended the wedding, and we had a lovely friendship that was we saw each other a lot up until we were teenagers, and Andrew became this really handsome, fit athlete because he used to swim for Great Britain, and he was on a pedestal. As I'm a bit younger than him, only by a few years, so I won't divulge how many years.
Take it.
I'm a
Take
little bit
it.
younger than him. But I had him on this pedestal because he was this fit athlete, and he was going places, and he was amazing. This big, tall guy, and he went off and swam, and then ended up competing in mountain biking and loads of other sporty things. Typical pedestal man. And I married Pete, and I was happy. He married Vivian, he was happy. There was never anything romantic, never. And then the week Pete died, pretty much the same week Pete died, Vivian was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And I
Oh,
remember
got bowel as
having
well.
this awful, awful sinking feeling, because in those moments when I heard that, it was oh my God, he's got all this to come.
Yeah.
He's got all this to come. It's laid out in front of him, and it was awful to think that somebody that I knew and that was such a family friend was going to feel like this at some point, the same as me. And you know, they, as I say, they pursued treatments, and when Vivian did pass, I had I'd been in sporadic contact with them, trying to offer support and signpost information that I knew from my own experiences and from my friends previously. But then when Vivian did pass again, I was trying to support. Do you know about this fund? There's this bereavement benefit that you could
Mm.
qualify for. Have you looked into this for helping to look at funeral costs, and have you done that, and all the paperwork, all the sadmin that's like, how many
You
death certificates
you
are you
became a
going to
grief
order, because you
Sherpa.
might need 10. I would always
Mm.
say to order 10, because all this awful sadmin that I was lucky because I had a military support worker that went through all of this with me. But if you're not in the military, you don't get someone coming round to your house and putting forms in front of you and telling you that you need to do this. You don't have people coming
No, my
round
mum and dad did
saying
it,
that
but
there's this pension pot here and there's that. You have to go hunting for all of this
yeah, oh
information,
yeah.
and it can be overwhelming. So I wanted to try and help, and it just, because I understood in a way that his other friends didn't understand. We had this, once a month I'd check in with him, and then that became, you know, once a fortnight. Then that became once a week, and our friendship we just got really close, really close. And my mum will argue till the end of her days that she saw this coming. And I'll let her have that one. That's fine, because annoyingly she's
She nearly
never
got in a
wrong.
helicopter.
Annoyingly, she's never wrong. She's got the sixth sense about everything. I can't hide much from her.
Mine too. Mine too.
But we found something in each other's company that neither of us thought was going to be possible again. And people talk about widow's fire, and the loneliness for me was crippling, and the craving of intimacy, was so overwhelming, and I didn't understand how I could feel so lonely in a room full of people, and then at night when the kids were in bed and everything was so quiet, and it was just me and the dogs, and the kids were upstairs, and you could hear their story tapes playing, and it was just overwhelming. And then you get to this point where when Pete died, I was 36. Even though my birthday afterwards, I thought I was turning 38, but I wasn't. I was only turning 37, but I'd made myself older. God knows why. And even now I get confused sometimes.
So do I.
What age am I going to be?
I've stopped
But I
counting.
just call that my widow brain. But I was like, I'm 36 years old. I can't possibly fathom a way of feeling like this for the rest of my life. I can't be on my own. I'm a hot-blooded female, and I've got to feel like there's more to me than being a widow. And
Mhm.
suppose, and with army life, you're a military wife. You're uh, that's who you are. You're Pete's wife, and all of a
Mm.
sudden Pete wasn't around anymore for me to be his wife. I still very much felt like his wife, but he's not here. So who am I? And I lost who I was, and I think a huge part of me died with Pete purely because I was that person, because he was the one that had
That
made me that
version of
person.
you.
I'd grown into that woman through being with
Mm.
him from, being in my 20s, and up to that age of losing him. Um, so I had to really forge a new me, because the old me couldn't exist without Pete, because he was such
No.
an integral part of who I was. Um, so I knew I didn't want to be on my own. I knew there was more in me to give, and to that wanted love, and that deserved love, and that
Yeah.
wanted affection again. And I found that in Andrew, which we never kind of set out to be like. All I wanted to do was support another widow, the way I had previously with people in our group. How you and I met, that wonderfully
Mm.
shitty group, which isn't
Widow's
shitty
fireplace.
at all, but we've got the shittest thing in common. It's like it's the best thing that could
It's
have
the
happened to
club
me.
nobody wants to join, isn't it? The most
Exactly.
exclusive club in the world, but nobody wants to be in it.
But I think being with a
I'm
widow, and you'll
really,
know this is, or you may agree or disagree, but I think being with a widow um gives you such a better relationship, because you don't have to hide your grief moments or your sorrow, or where you're completely overwhelmed. And I
yeah,
mean, I've still got boxes that I haven't unpacked, and I moved from Germany 6 years ago.
yeah. I also have some boxes in the basement and things like when I went to have my wedding and engagement ring remade from Ben, John paid for it because he was like, you need to be able to wear this. And actually, I don't have it on right in a second, but I quite like having one on each hand because two husbands, just one of them
Yeah,
doesn't get a say anymore.
this is it.
Well, Kurt,
Do you find the one that doesn't get the
Kurt
say anymore gets the blame for everything when the kids do something wrong? I'm like, oh yeah, oh that's your dad,
totally,
that is,
yeah,
yeah, that's his fault.
totally, yeah. But when they do really well, I'm like, that's because I took
Oh,
such good care of
completely. I take
him.
all the praise, and Pete gets blamed with all the oh.
Yeah, and I don't, and I don't know, is it the same with the girls, but with my boys, primarily the oldest, is just looking so much like him, and that's quite uncanny as well when they start to look like carbon copies of their dead
Yeah,
parent.
and I have that.
Now,
I mean, my girls have both taken to Andrew very differently. Meredith struggles
oh yes,
because she doesn't want to accept that her father is dead. That
yeah,
has only just come out really in the last couple of months of she and I talking very openly and calmly. She feels that if she accepts Andrew and his son Riley into our lives, it means that her dad's not coming back.
yeah,
And th- that's hard to hear, because to me, it's a given that he's not coming back. I've,
yeah,
I've I've never thought about the possibility that he wasn't coming back. Um,
no,
because he hadn't gone anywhere, and that was my whole thing. No, he didn't go somewhere, darling. He is dead. We can't change that. I wish to God I could, but I can't.
yeah,
But
and
Meredith
but
is,
that's all you can
well,
do
this is
is
it.
talk, isn't
But
it? Is
Meredith
the lines
has
of
she
communication.
is she's fighting her demons, but she's facing them, and I'm so proud of her for
Yeah,
wanting to face them at this stage. Heather, on the other hand, I mean,
excuse me.
not that I'm not proud of her, because I really am, but she is so full of love for Andrew, and she has
Oh,
embraced Andrew very early on. She opened her heart to him. She wasn't, she wasn't not going to give her heart, and she calls him dad, and she's connected, and he loves that. Riley doesn't call me mum, but he calls me Kirsty, and Riley was 5 when his mum passed away. Um, sorry, my asthma's bad.
don't worry, it's either you or me. I've just been sneezing.
And
And actually, oh, sorry,
no,
you
like I say,
continue.
it doesn't. I don't mind Riley calling me mum or Kirsty, or you could call me shitbag if you really wanted. I might be a bit offended, but
Draw the line at that.
yeah.
Well, Holly asked me quite early on if she could call me mum. So her mum is Sarah, is her mummy, and again, pictures everywhere.
Yeah.
Much more things from a woman. And she asked me if she could call me mum quite early on, but she was 6, and I think a 6-year-old girl, particularly, she needed a mother, and it's been an honour to be her mother. So, but it gets tricky, I think, when it comes to sort of parenting and things as they get older, because when they're little, you just sort of it's like carnage, just get on with it. But as they get older and become individuals, you do have to start adapt your parenting style a little bit. And I do think that in deep-rooted trauma, which will be in kids who've lost a parent young, you can see it sort of start to come out with the hormones. But I've never done this before. You've never done this before. We're navigating. We're learning on the job. And I think we're doing an all right job of it.
They're both. Well, my 2 are still alive. I'm quite impressed that they're still breathing. So.
One of yours by the skin of her teeth.
Yeah, one of them by the skin of her teeth. Yeah.
Well, Kirsty, I'm gonna draw it to a close now, because I realise I have I was late getting to you, and now I've kept you for ages. But I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I feel like I know you better. I feel like I understand your situation better. I feel like I know Pete better, actually. And I'm so proud of you for doing this, because it is scary to sit and go back into it, especially you don't always want. Oh, if you talk to me, you don't always want to. So thank you for putting yourself through this. I hope that you find it cathartic. I know it can leave you a little jarred, so just go easy. Sweet cup of tea, that's what you need. And I just wish you every happiness. And I am so glad that love's come back into your life. And I hope that the girls continue to fly. Tell Meredith I want to see more ballet dancing. In modern, no.
She doesn't do modern. So Meredith she does contemporary.
That's the one I think
she
of.
is contemporary, acro, and lyrical. But she's not. She's got to do Highland dancing at boarding school now. Ooh. So it's a completely different genre that she's trying.
Fun fact for you: I'm not a dancer. I was asked. I don't think I was asked to leave ballet. Tap I wasn't interested in, and Scottish country dancing every Saturday, 3 years.
So Kaylee's your jam. We need a Kaylee then.
I can't. Oh Jesus! I was about 8. But
oh no! You've thrown that gauntlet down now. Now you've just admitted that you've thrown the gauntlet down.
You get me out at Woodstock.
So at your widowed gathering, I expect
that's it. I
expect Scottish
river dancing across the stage.
Yeah, do it.
I think my mum just wanted rid of me for an hour on a Saturday morning. Truth be told, Kirsty, but that'll be why my kid does 3 hours on a Saturday. Anyway, on that nice note, because I'll leave us laughing, I will say goodbye to you now, but only temporarily, I hope. And to our listeners, I know that they'll be joining me in thanking you today. So if you've got any questions around Kirsty's episode, I can't tell you when this will be going out, because I have no idea, but it'll probably be March time. So if any of the listeners do have questions, I'm sure that you'll be happy to answer. So send them in to me, and just look after yourselves, and one foot in front of the other, guys. Let's keep muddling through together.
As always. So thank you so much, Rosie.
Just keep fucking going. My pleasure, darling. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.